phrase livable wage is the most polite form of economic violence I've ever heard in my whole life. I can just stand by that. I can just stand by that. Because what is livable wage? Livable to who? For how long? With what dignity? Well, how many skip meals are considered reasonable in this equation? I just want the math to come together. Because you know what livable means in this economy? It means you don't die fast enough to disrupt businesses. It means you just make enough to come back tomorrow. Not enough to rest, not enough to breathe, not enough to leave, just enough to keep showing up grateful. That's the whole thing. And the phrase itself is a gentrified phrase. Livable wage is a gentrified phrase. I can show you what I mean. Livable used to mean I can raise my kid, eat good food, sleep in peace, and not fear this landlord. Now it means I could afford gas station ramen and pray that toothache goes away on its own. When business owners say, when they talk to y'all about livable wage, I want you to understand what's going on. They always talk like this. We can't afford to pay a livable wage. I want you to hear the translation. I want you to hear the translation. Here's what they're really saying. We need your poverty to keep our profit margin stable. We need your exhaustion to stay in power. We built a system that only works if your soul stays discounted. I just want you to understand the situation. They want you to live in the gray zone between breakdown and submission. And that's where you technically don't starve, but you're never well fed enough to leave. Because livable wage is never about living. It's about controlling how much you have to live. Right? Controlling how much you have to grieve. It's the bare minimum you'll tolerate and the slowest path to collapse. It's the least amount of money capitalism can offer without sparking a riot. I just want you to see the situation. Here's the real sting. The real thing is that the moment that you ask for more, guess what you get called? You get called entitled. You get called ungrateful. You get called unrealistic. You know what they say? You should be happy to have this job. But what they mean is you should be happy to be owned in installments. Is that where you're okay with? Do you see what I mean? Because the system ain't never been broken. It's working exactly as designed. You're supposed to confuse exhaustion with opportunity. That's what they want from you. So I want you to step beyond that. You don't want a livable wage. You want a worthy one, a dignified one that lets your soul stretch in the morning instead of calculating survival by lunch. Stop asking for livable. Ask for restorative. Ask for sustainable. Ask for expansive. Ask for soft. Ask for unapologetic. Ask for beautiful, because you were never born to budget your breath. I just want you to see where I'm coming from. Living wage conceptually is the floor, because but here's the thing. Here's the thing, right? If living wage is your moral standard, it's the floor. Humans were never meant to live at the floor. So we got to get beyond this. We got to look at the true demands. We need a soul-compatible economy. No paycheck should require you disconnected from your child's milestones or your spiritual center to maintain. I just want that to be clear. We also need narrative dignity, not just enough money, but we need the right to be unmonitored, the right to be unpoliced, the right to be unperformed for capital. Not to say that your value only exists or is earned through work. Because that's what livable means. That's what makes it so gentrified, because livable implies that your value is still earned through work. But to be valued is to be allowed to be without needing to justify your own breath. That's value. But livable wage still does that. So still puts us in that position. So we need narrative dignity. But we also need economic softness. Not comfort for the rich, but systemic gentleness. We need to truly, and I say this with so much depth. We need to be able to put ourselves in a position, group wide, where we can make mistakes without it becoming a generational curse. Because what you want isn't just a livable wage. You want dignity. You want room to be able to fall, recover, and try again without the state anticipating your ruin. Communal infrastructure, not even founded in personal income, but shared systems that hold us. Right? So think about something like this. Because the world, livable wage, sometimes gets framed through this narrow line of sight where you just look at the world like through a lens of you versus the rent. And it's not you versus the rent. We were never meant to individually out-hustle the collapse. Right. I just want you to gather yourself in the context of this, because sometimes when we talk about livable wage, it isn't reasonable. Because a true economy is based on the time that you have and not the money. So when you're talking about livable wage, you don't even just want the wage, you want the time. So we got to make sure we talk about having enough freedom that your nervous system can stop bracing. Because what's the point of livable if your soul is still surviving every clock in? So we don't want livable wages. We could do so much more damage. So much more damage. We want soul compatible labor. time sovereignty, narrative dignity. We want gentle consequences and communal rootedness, safety without surveillance, and a future that doesn't require us to fracture to earn light. That's all I'm saying. We were asking to matter because one of the biggest things about living in a white supremacist world is that all belonging must be earned. And if you've been black this whole time like me, then you know that ain't never been how it's been for us. Your belonging ain't supposed to be earned. You are. Right? And this is one of those things where we really got to get people to embrace because you are, I am, it really is like that. It is like that. So it's beyond livable wage. It's a gentrified word. And if that word don't include room for your dignity, if livable wage does not include room for your dignity, I'm not hearing about it.